Welcome to the Inside Scoop, a news channel where we talk about the latest news and the most important, all broadcasted live. This particular episode was broadcasted on March 10th, so if you aren't watching this on March 10th, please keep up with us and watch Inside Scoop every night at 7 p.m.
Breaking news. The Secretary of State came out with a plan to help Ukraine during their crisis on March 10th. Many were interested with the speech, but also had many questions. Coming up now is the Secretary of State, Catherine, giving her speech as well as a private interview with the staff of the Secretary of State, answering many of the questions that were being asked by the public. Now let's look at the formal plan for the Ukraine crisis.
Good evening, President Kata and fellow Americans. As your Secretary of State, I have decided to come out with a plan to deal with Vladimir Putin's aim to attack Ukraine. He sent troops into Ukraine, bombing capital cities, and facing true strength and bravery in the eyes of the Ukrainian people. As the Secretary of State, I am taking the great responsibility to protect democracy abroad and at home very seriously, and therefore, with the support of my team, we have developed a detailed response and plan to help Ukraine. The main goals of the United States will be to work with Congress to pass the Home Refugee Act to provide more housing for refugees fleeing to neighboring countries, provide more military support for President Zelensky and the people of Ukraine, which will include sending more ammunition directly to Ukrainian fighters, sending additional troops to neighboring NATO alliance countries, encouraging volunteer drill instructors from America to help train the Ukrainian people and send them to Rzeszów military base in southeastern Poland. This military base is near the border of Ukraine and can be used to train militia. We would also like to add sanctions to further weaken Russia's economy, and we would like to have a budget of $200 billion for both humanitarian aid to send to Ukraine and for military aid, as outlined in the American Rescue Plan. Russia will not threaten. Russia will not win. With these goals, we will further weaken Putin and provide necessary materials to Ukraine. Let us stand strong and help our fellow countries. Thank you, and keep Ukraine in your thoughts.
These ideas aim to stop Putin in his tracks. We also have been given a timeline for when these goals want to be achieved, many of them ranging from March 10th to March 17th. As it can be seen, these goals have been created to destroy Putin's plan to take over Ukraine. Coming up next is an inside scoop of an interview answering some of the questions that were originally left unanswered.
Thank you, Natalie. We're here with Franklin, Brianna, and Gerardo. Franklin, how are you planning on providing support for Ukraine, and what action is the U.S. planning on taking to prevent Putin from doing more terrible acts?
It's pretty obvious that the crisis with the whole Ukraine crisis, it's a very delicate situation. Every action you take towards that problem, it holds an unbearable amount of weight. And so we believe that the safest route possible to basically counteract Russia's invasion would be to try and cripple them economically. We believe that if we try to cripple them economically, it will restrict the amount of attacks and large-scale attacks that they can provide. And we will also try to provide Ukraine with some ammunition and humanitarian needs.
Could any of the actions the U.S. has taken jeopardize the safety of our civilians and country? And will the ARP's Ukraine plans lead to a hot war with Russia?
Like I said before, we want to try and sort of cripple them economically, try to restrict the amount of attacks that they can provide. And, if that all works out well, it's pretty, I'm sure that Russia will want to opt out and try and provide any more sort of attacks because, well, war is expensive. So I'm pretty confident to say that, this won't jeopardize any of the citizens. We're not directly involving them, and this won't jeopardize like another World War III. So I'm pretty confident that, if all resolves well, we'll try to resolve it peacefully.
Thank you. Moving on to you, Brianna. Which U.S. departments will the Department of State coordinate with, and what other states will the U.S. collaborate with to fulfill the aims of the ERP?
So we will need the help of different departments such as U.S. Department of Defense, U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, as well as U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. We would also have to work with other countries that may or may not be part of NATO, and their support is needed for housing for refugees as well as military and for defense. We also will work with International Rescue Committee, which is located in Poland and will help welcome refugees. Also, Doctors Without Borders is a non-governmental organization that will ensure people have access to health and medicine.
Thank you. Gerardo, how much money is the department proposing to spend on Ukraine aid, and where will the economic funding come from?
They're proposing around $200 billion for the Ukraine aid, along with the weaponry as well. And where this funding would come from neighboring countries. So, for example, Australia, it would give in 70 million, and the European Union would provide 500 million, both for military assistance, and the U.S. aid 25 million more in humanitarian for Ukraine assistance.
Thank you all very much. Back to you, Natalie.
This is the timeline given to us right after the Secretary of State's plan came out. They would like to go to Congress after the plan with a written statement for the Home Refugee Act and hope to have everything approved and signed by March 16th to March 17th. They want to send ammunition to Ukraine immediately. They also want to add more sanctions and make them stricter by March 11th, the latest. They hope to send troops tomorrow, March 11th, to neighboring NATO countries. They also hope to have the action of sending drill instructors to Ukraine passed and cleared for March 12th. And finally, they want to have the written proposal for the new American Rescue Plan budget given to President Carter by tomorrow and have a verdict by March 14th.
And that will be all for this week's Inside Scoop.